Here. Mr. Olson,
Here.
Mr. Walker, Mr. Erkins, Mr. Rastiger.
Here.
Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
Seeing
Is that
none,
appropriate?
okay.
You want something?
Nope, I think we just move forward. So first item is recognizing violation, and I'll let Pat take it.
Agenda item A, actions recognizing violation of the open meetings law, section 742081. That agendas were not posted on the district website January 19th, 2023 board meeting as required, incurring such violation by declaring that any action taken at the January 19th, 2023 meeting are null and void.
So we get to do everything again, and Pat or Mike, I don't know if you
Pardon?
want to jump in.
Sure. I mean, obviously it was just, an inadvertent error, and as Pat pointed out, we actually, although we have the entire year's meetings listed on the website, we managed to accidentally mispost the agenda. So, thankfully somebody pointed that out. So all we're effectively doing here, Madam Chair, is formally undoing what action the board took, and effectively will be, to the extent we need to, redoing those actions in this meeting. I guess the one thing I'd point out is that although those actions weren't able to be taken in the January 19th meeting, we did have there was enough notice published that the public did have a chance to listen. It was we did record it, so if anybody wanted to hear what took place, we do have that taking place. So need a board motion to formally acknowledge and undo those actions, and then we'll move forward.
Great. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Undo and redo.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we had, as Mike indicated, it was totally inadvertent. We had some staffing changes and some training going on, and so it just simply was one of those things. So my apologies to the board and to the public, and we got and I take responsibility. We've been doing a great job over the course of the last few years, and I took a little too much for granted. So we'll do that again.
We got it, and appreciate the, notification from the public of letting us know that it wasn't on there, and because I think we were all just making the assumptions that it was, so we got it corrected, and we're gonna have it up there from moving forward. All right, so first item is to swear you in.
Getting good at this.
Again, I know. Here we go. Okay. Right hand. I swear that I will support the Constitution
I swear that I will support the Constitution
of the state of Idaho
of the state of Idaho
and the laws and ordinance of the state of Idaho,
and the laws and ordinance of the state of Idaho,
Ada County and Boise City, Idaho,
Ada County and Boise City, Idaho,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance in same,
that I will take the obligations without reservation,
that I will take the obligations without reservations,
that I will faithfully discharge the duties
that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office to which I have been appointed.
of the office to which I have been appointed.
Congratulations.
Thank
for a
you
second
again.
time.
Thank you very much.
You sign. In this time, no mistakes.
You took it slower, so that
Yeah.
helped.
With that, I entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes dated December 16th, 2022.
So moved.
All those in favor?
All right.
Oh, wait, I needed a second, sorry. So moved. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Chase is saying he's having troubles logging in.
You have a cell number?
I do. ends in 4900,
208.
789,
Okay, thanks.
4900. I'd also entertain a motion for the approval of minutes from the special meeting dated January 4th, 2023.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Minutes are approved.
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
we should just point out, and Pat had mentioned this to me, which I hadn't really thought through, which is that obviously we don't have minutes from the attempted meeting of
Right.
January 19th because it was not a formal meeting. So there aren't any minutes to approve for that
So next,
meeting, which did not technically take place.
right, yes. So the monthly activity and financial report. January.
Thanks, Madam Chair, members of the board. We initiated work with the recruiter. And that is moving forward. The posting for the executive director position will be March 1st. I scheduled a presentation. This is Chase's Rotary Club presentation on March 9th. Mary Michael and I are putting that together right now, the PowerPoint. Reminder to the board, the Chamber Leadership Conference is April 23 through 25. If you'd like to attend, let me know. I'll get our reservations and registrations done for you. We already have 3 representatives, myself, Chase and Tim, already reserved and registered. Also have Cody registered and for that as well. We met with representatives from Columbia Hospitality, the Sparrow Hotel, the new boutique hotel. Kristen, Cody, I think was there as well. So it's part of the, it's John Oppenheimer's company and really, really good people. And they try to be market leaders in wherever they are. And they've got some really cool properties. So there's a lodge up in Montana that I think our board member Jody would absolutely enjoy. If you go on their website, you can see elk and fly fishing. So particularly the fly fishing part of it. Met with CSL and Meridian Chamber reps to discuss.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
what's the ownership of Columbia
It's John Oppenheimer's company.
exclusively?
I believe it's a partnership, but of the brothers of Skip and Doug, John is the I think is the principal at least of Columbia. But he's involved. He's the one who's involved with hotels. But again, I can't answer the questions.
Thank you.
So. Couple of photos, Jane DeLuca Foundation Masquerade Ball. We had 650 guests. Again, I always like to highlight for the clients, or for the public and for the board what we do. This is the Idaho inaugural dinner, 900. Both events.
Oh, we got rid of her.
Can't speak to the photos, sir, simply the setup.
That's a former lieutenant governor.
I don't know who's in that photo, sir.
Excuse me.
Just a couple of highlights from December. Again, the meeting that didn't officially take place last month. We had record revenues. We had 25 events, 24 local, 1 convention, 27 event days. And as I've talked several times, we were, December of 2021 was impacted by Delta variant, where pretty much everything, I mean, you can just see the numbers. We had 6 events and 6 event days. So that the kickstart to 2023 was phenomenal in December of 2022. So again, totally different landscape. We had 6,000 attendees through December 19th, which was the last event. So again, just a phenomenal start to the year. Hotel room demand continued to decrease though 3 months in a row compared to prior year. I think that had to do, obviously with, Delta was coming back, but a lot of the other states around us started to open up by then. So we're paying attention. Rates are still up year over year. As I noted there, 11 and 12 months, the exception was November. So rates continue to be up to prior year. And so again, it's just the decrease in demand, and it's both in group 1 and group 2, which group 1 is Boise City and group 2 is Ada County in my STAR report. So, it's not that it's not the group 2 is remaining high. It's impacted both. So anyway, again, just a couple of quick highlights from then. The numbers pretty much speak for themselves here. Year over year growth, the fact that we continue to have record revenues going into the new year. The cost, though, the fixed fees are what they are, the lease payments that we're making. So the cash position remains strong. So again, we're starting off the year exceptionally well. What I like about this on the local event side, we're already 25% there after 2 months. And the rest of the year is just very, very busy. We're entering a crazy time. The fall, you probably heard Cody talk about this. The fall is now the new busy. It used to be January, February, March weren't that strong. And now we're moving some of the local events around to accommodate conventions as well as the galas that are starting to take place January, February, March. So again, we're turning away business, and it's because we don't have space. So the inquiries, can't remember how many inquiries that Stacy said that we had already in the first couple of months. And in fact, we were talking today, there's 2 events that we've had in the last 3 weeks that couldn't find dates for next year. They wanted March and it's not available, so they're gonna have to go somewhere else. One's going to local hotel, and I'm not sure what the other one's gonna do at this point. So again, I'm excited about where we are so far, and I have a feeling that we're gonna fill in as much as we can the rest of the year. Staffing levels are looking strong. So in fact, there were some events that were coming up that we thought we'd have all hands on deck, and it's not. We have the staffing to handle it. So talked a little bit about occupancy ADR already. The occupancy declined 14% and 6% above 2019, but again down 13% from November. ADR decreased, but it's still up to prior year, and again still highest ADR in December on record. So we're paying attention to the demand side, but the rates continue to be strong. Again, demand and revenues, talk about that. Sales for next year already very strong. We're still sitting at 63 confirmed conventions for this year. If the tentative and tracking come to fruition, we'll be at 70. So you hear me talk every month about opportunity, and we're squeezing them in if we can, but what's on the books look very, very strong. In mid-size, pretty much that's what we can take because of the hotel partnerships. But again, that's our bread and butter, and we're doing great there. This came in a little bit late. I don't believe it's actually in your packet, but this came from Visit Boise. I mentioned CVB. For Boise CVB. A couple of things to note. I couldn't do it on the slide, but top left, dates not available at hotels. That's a pretty key factor. The biggest one, though, dates not available at Boise Center. And the estimated lost revenue is $8.5 million. But then you look at the dates not available at the hotels. So again, as we talk about compatibility, it's pretty significant, almost $3.5 million. I don't deal with the sports stuff. The lower left corner there. You know, prefer one hotel, and too many hotels needed. We've talked about that. And again, $4.5 million worth of lost business. Lack of hotel interest, can't speak to that necessarily. Hotel room rates, you know, even though it's a very small percentage of the pie, you know, as a second tier city, we were always, you know, very, very affordable. And I think we still are, comparatively speaking. But it's interesting to note that there are some groups now that are, you know, rate conscious enough to at least note it. And then over on the lower right, the one that I want to highlight, it's third from the bottom, it's government rate per diem hotel rates not available. And again, the legislature bumped the per diem rates a couple of years ago to like 149, which was very significant at the time. And everybody was celebrating, but now when average rates are pushing 200, you know, well, market average rate is, you know, pushing 150, 160. That means that you've got hotels, particularly in the downtown core, at 200 plus as an average rate. So as we try to court government business, that per diem is going to be a challenge, and we've you know, working on it, but very little effort to, or very little response to try to get it up at this point. Again, this page is just a recap of the pie chart. Second one down is dates not available here, dates not available at hotels. So that's, you know, 2, 3, prefer one hotel, lack of hotel interest. So in the top 10, you know, we've got 4 things that are very important to get folks in. And then again, you can see where the rest of it falls: hotel room rates, waste center costs, government per diem rates not available, and then client wanted under one roof. So again, it'd be great if we could get one large hotel, but I don't see that happening in the foreseeable future. But I think that this speaks volumes about the availability of both hotels and Boise Center. So the need for more space.
Let me ask a clarifying question, Madam Chair. So that the per diem rate is a federal rate, correct? The government rate?
The government
And so
rate.
that delta between the per diem and the room rates average.
State. Actually, it's state, not federal, right, Pat?
Oh, I'm sorry, state rate.
It's state.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yep.
state.
Okay, that answers my question. I was wondering if other communities also have to deal with that delta between the per diem and their average daily rates.
They do. I can't speak necessarily directly to it, but Department of Tourism tracks the state number.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep. Financial report off to Anne Marie.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. We've had a great month. Our district is about 70,000 above budget in revenue, and our transfers are about $700,000 below budget. We continue to run lower on our operating transfers to Boise Center, and that's mostly because our gross profit is significantly better than we budgeted last year, or budgeted when we went into this year. We had budgeted our gross margins about 8%, where we had budgeted a loss of 30%. And the reason was because we had budgeted lower revenues. If you look at when we went into the budgeting cycle last year, and we went in with thinking we were going to go into another COVID. We were headed into the COVID. I'm trying to remember the Delta variant. So we were thinking we were going to be heading into a recession. And so we budgeted revenues lower than what we're actually seeing. I don't think anybody expected this year to be so strong so early. And as a result, our loss is $632,000 better than budget, again, due to the higher revenues. The higher revenues contribute to the higher gross margin. And here's the combined revenue and expenses. You can see that Boise Center is, if you look at the green, bottom green line, Boise Center 633,000 better than budget. District's 298,000 better than budget. Aquatics is 42,000 under budget, and that is in the revenues we had forecasted that we would be further along in the aquatic center so and be done, and our rent would go up, and so we projected higher rental revenue. But overall, on a combined basis, we're better than budget, $888,000. And if you look at last year's same time, we were on a combined basis, we're currently at revenues over expenses at 82,000. Combined last year was a loss of 294. So we're 376,000 better than prior year.
On the gross margin, you said it was 8%?
Mhm.
Was that year to date or just for the previous month?
It's year to date, last month was around 7.
Okay.
So we're moving in the right direction on that.
And so the average at the end of the year is when you kind of look at the overall gross margin, see where we are, because I know that we've been kind of tracking that, right?
Yeah, you look at, yeah,
You're looking
exactly.
at the year, okay,
Yeah, we try to,
because I know that probably in the fall you have better gross margin.
yeah, whenever, yeah, if we have higher revenues, you're gonna have a higher gross margin because we have fixed costs. And
Yeah.
so the higher revenue is then left, covers the fixed costs, and then you've just got your variable costs. Did you have a question, Jody? No, okay. Financial highlights, we are, right now, the tax revenues are at 1.3, we have budgeted 1.2 million, so we're slightly ahead of budget on the tax revenues. Operating revenues, you can see Boise Center, so the blue is where we're at, actual green is budget, and as you can see in January, we are significantly better than budget. Pat even challenged us on that and said, how'd that happen? And it was, well, when we went into budget last year, we were looking at COVID and a recession, and so we budgeted less than where we're at today. Square foot utilization by month, the blue is where we're at or forecasting for 2023. You can see May is a little short at this time. Not as many conventions as last year or as many events right now. So we do have some room in May to fit some events in there if we can. Aquatic Center rents $7,800. The next pay app review they had a meeting on February 21st. I have not had any additional information on that. I did talk to Ryan yesterday asking him what they thought the cash needs would be, and he indicated that we probably would need to start paying again this month. So I also have a meeting set up today with our investment group to maybe see if we can move another $2 million over into our investments. Improve the yield on that.
Where would that put us with them total?
That'll get us up to the 20 million.
Okay.
Yeah,
Pool piping is done. The pools are backfilled and the pool concrete deck is coming up. It's moving along. And one of the furnace or
Both units are actually,
okay,
in fact, Nick will talk about that.
yeah, okay, great. Won't steal your thunder. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Pat or Anne Marie? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the monthly activity and finance reports.
I'll move that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. We'll be over fine, Chase.
Yeah, Chase should be on, right? Yep.
I'm here. It's just loud in the background, so keep it on mute to save you.
Well, you look great, Chase.
Okay, so the executive session is we need to move into, correct?
Yes.
We do so by roll call vote.
Well, actually, you did describe what you're going to do in
Oh,
executive
yes,
session for.
right.
So
Sorry. God, I'm off. It's Monday morning.
Monday, that's what it is.
Okay. Somebody make a motion to go into executive session and read section A.
Make a motion.
Thank you.
Read
Read
A.
A, read all of it.
Executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 47-206-1A to consider hiring an individual agent wherein the respective qualities of individual were to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need. B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against an employee.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll do,
Now
Roll call vote.
now roll call. vote. Thank
Roll
you.
call vote pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74-206-1AB. Ms. Mucko,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker, Mr. Erkins,
Yes.
Mr. Rastiger.
Yes.
Now we can stop.
Now you can
Okay.
stop.
Chase, can you hear us?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, good. Thanks, Chase. We're gonna have to stop doing meetings on Mondays. Yep, we're good.
Okay, all right, on to item number B, executive director compensation.
Do you want me to read it?
Well,
On a motion?
just I need a motion for the increase
Gotcha. I'll motion
or
for increase.
increasing the salary to 8.4% and a bonus of 5%.
So I'll motion to increase the salary to 8.4% and the bonus by 5%.
Do I have a second? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. On to item C, succession planning, recruiter retention. I entertain a motion to make a move on that,
I so move.
A second.
to
Higher extender.
hire extender recruiting for recruitment services. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, on to item D.
I'll make a motion to form the ad hoc hiring committee by Kristen and
Jim.
Jim.
Do we otherwise give you the ability to
Add members as
add or change members?
change members as needed.
As well as adding and changing members as needed.
Yes.
We'll make it through. Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right. Whew. Done with the redo. Cody, operations update.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the reason Cody is here is because we ran out of time at the work session in January. And so he was not able to give the update on the operations side. And moving forward, I think what I'll do, rather than trying to do a work session, is to allow the directors one director every other month or every 3 months to give an update. And that way it'll keep you apprised of what's going on without having to sit through a work session. We'll extend the board meetings a little bit, but collectively it's one sitting rather than an hour extension. So we'll see how that goes.
Thank you, Pat. Madam Chair, directors of the board, thank you for your time today. Excited to kind of give this report here on our fiscal year 2022 recap and fiscal year 23 review, kind of looking ahead, our preview. Just kind of starting out here, I wanted to show a quick picture of the Boise Center work chart. This is something that we're very proud of to look at as coming out of COVID, we shrunk down to about 27 full-time employees. And again, have rebuilt the team back very quickly. We protected many of that staff, as Pat has talked to the board in the past. Did something different than our counterparts in the region and also nationally at convention centers. A lot of those people kind of didn't see the forest through the trees and didn't protect the team to the level that we did during COVID. And that's something that I appreciate the board's support on, because it allowed us to kind of get into a quicker rebound than what we're seeing our counterparts. And I'll get into that a little bit. Probably this next slide just kind of shows a little bit of what I'm responsible for as the assistant executive director, just for TM's probably benefit. This shows all of my direct reports here is the director of operations, who's Nick Shoba, the director of food and beverage, who is Chris Lochner, our senior event manager, who is Stacy Lisby and manages all of the event team. And then IT manager is Tony Colangelo, and our BSA is Rebecca Johnson, who manages our system, Ungerbach, that does all of our events, our finance.
Define the acronym.
Oh, BSA is Business Systems Analyst, sorry, speak to that as a manager and kind of know. So that is our systems analyst that basically manages the Ungerbach system. We use it for finance, we use it from the event side and from the sales side. So she's an intricate part, and then all of the direct reports below them that come through. This makes up of our current 217 staff, about 190 of them report through this branch here. So just getting into kind of a fiscal year 2022 event recaps and highlights, as Pat has talked about. I didn't get into December because there wasn't enough events really to list there. In January, there wasn't very many as well, but we had a very slow start, as it's been talked about at prior meetings and also in this meeting here due to the COVID variants that were going on. But realistically, by the time February happened, things started to pick up very quickly. All of these events that are highlighted are shown on the slides are 40,000 and above in total revenue. So this isn't all of our total events in the month. These are all of our substantial total events in each month. And it kind of shows you how the Boise Center strategically plans those conventions and the events that happen, because some of these are conventions, some of them are local events. And then those that are in bold are anything that's in the 6 figures of revenue. And again, this is something that historically we had not had very many events that broke that amount in revenue. And we continue to see that increase on a lot of these events year over year.
Madam Chair, Cody, what is revenue?
Revenue is total spend at Boise Center. So that would be room rent, food and beverage spend, audiovisual spend, security, any of that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Is the Wings Conference, is that gymnastics?
No, that is actually the Northwest Lineman College, which actually we're about to have the 2023 event in-house this upcoming, they're moving in today. And it is a very large convention and conference. And so as I go through these, in particular, that Wings Conference is about 144,000 total in revenue. It brings in substantial food and beverage revenue, room rent, AV rent from an event side, as well as economic impact.
We have wings in east and wheat in west.
Yes, we have the weed sciences and not that kind of weed, so not the Oregon kind. In both sides of the building. So again, a chance to kind of see how that these events go through from February, March, April, and May. I've spoke to this in the past. Historically, September, October, November are our busy seasons. This is now our second busy season. February is becoming, which is then leading into March and even into compression into the end of January. So I've had a local trade show I actually had to talk to just about 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, where historically they started in October. This would have been 10, 15 years ago. Me and Pat had to meet with the owner of that event and explain to him how October was continuing to see demand, and a trade show event was not something that made sense for us to be booking with the convention demand and the amount of food and beverage revenue that we had options for. We had to move them into January. Actually, I think we moved them into the early February, eventually moved them into the end of January. And now I've had to move them out of the end of January into earlier January. So the local events that don't drive a lot of revenue are continuing to fill that pinch point as we are revenue managing our space a little closer going forward. And I'll speak to that as I get forward on my slides. As you start to look at the rest of the year, you can start to see June. Again, solid business in June for being a summer month and when a lot of people are taking vacations. We actually have quite a few conventions that take place during that time. So a great job by the sales team. Also just local events continue to help us carry us through the summer. July highlights, Albertsons Floral is something the sales team has worked on. CSG West Annual Meeting is a large piece of business. It's about $116,000 in revenue. Cradle Point for July was an unbelievable anomaly this July, about $238,000 in revenue. So again, an unbelievable summer that we had. And if the sales team and the local event team can continue to be strategic in the way we're managing the calendar, I anticipate this continuing going forward. fall, a lot of local demand, but also convention demand. And as you can see, the number of events that continue to get bolded. As I was going through this morning and actually just analyzing these from the forecast into this year, a lot of these events I think are going to turn bold from the forecast into what the actuals are from these forecasts going forward.
I want to note something, not stealing Cody on this, but we talked a lot about, and you've heard me talk a lot about this, and I'm not quite sure how to drive the point home, but in 2021, we did 3.8 million. In 2022, we did 9 million. And we did 9 million in 10 months, not 12, but 10, because December and January were COVID related. And I really can't tell you how proud of this team I am to do what we did in 10 months. That this year, honestly, the way we're starting out, I think we have a great potential to beat 2022 at this point if things continue the way they are. The key here is managing the space. And so even though some of the utilization might be down as we look forward, the revenue generation is there. And again, the sales and the event team have really worked hard to manage. And particularly, again, not only did we do it in 10 months last year, we did it in a year that we stopped taking business because we were concerned about staffing levels. So again, last year is the new benchmark for us. Absolutely.
And I think then 2 more slides, I get right into that point here that'll drive that home actually, Pat. So as I go through again, looking at next year, and I was doing this morning, just taking a look at what we forecasted for Q1. Some of these events have actually happened now that Q1 is coming to the end at the end of this month. And forecasting in particular, as I look at Boise Regional Realtors, we tend to do the best that we can from a forecasting side, but Regional Realtors this year is actually down. So while many of my other events are continuing to increase in revenues based on the market in that particular industry, we're seeing that event kind of withdraw back as far as the total spend. So we take our best shot at trying to forecast, but again, what happens within the year or what's happening in the economy really drives those events. And so we're trying to a lot of times forecast these out 18 months ahead, 2 years out, and then sharpen the pencil as we get down to budget season. This is the slide that I think that actually paints that picture that Pat was just talking about. This goes all the way back to 2017, and this is something I'm very, very proud of in particular as well. Just the team has done an outstanding job in revenue managing the space. So I know this year, as we got into the finance committee meetings and the budget committee meetings, there was a lot of topics, discussion about whether it's economic impact or whether it's Boise Center revenue. And historically, I think we've been more focused about 70% on the economic impact, about 30% on the revenue. This year, we're shifting to about a 50-50 and continuing to evaluate that based on how things are going, based on the hotel availability, local event demand, and then the convention demand and the convention business that we have the ability to pick up. Going back into 2017, we did 309 total events for about 5.7 million in revenue. And we had 161,000 total attendees come through the building in that year. The next year in 2018, that's right after we built Boise Center East. So that's an important benchmark to note there. And this was where our forecasts or our goals at this point in time was to try to drive convention revenue, try to drive conventions. Local events were kind of in the background a little bit behind this. And we've shifted a little bit since. And as you can see in 2018, we did 327 events, driving that event number up. And we did better on the revenue side with 7.6 million and then 172,000 in total attendance. As you can see, that continued to tick up about the same process until COVID happened in 2020, big impacts, but really the picture here is the number of events that we did in 2022 at 254 being strategic. As Pat talked about, we turned away events in the second half. The first half, we didn't have them. And we were very strategic in the type of events. We put in some minimums in place where they didn't exist prior for private events, something like a social event. We were noticing a lot of bookings for would be class reunions. They were thinking it would be a 300-person event. By the time it would come through the door, it was more like a 50 or 60-person event. So we started protecting ourselves by putting some minimums in place. And I think that's led to some of this. Hopefully, the compression has pushed some businesses to local hotels that can do that size of group. And in particular, allows us to free up dates and be more strategic in our planning of the number of events might be less. But as you can see, the revenue and the attendance still, again, COVID was an impact at the beginning there, is at 145,000. So I think this paints the clearest picture as to what the team is really doing from a strategy standpoint and managing the space that we've got and then the revenues. Any questions before I move on from this slide?
we had 240 employees prior to COVID back in 2019, well, 2020, the first quarter. And we're up to, I think, it's even a little higher than
217, we're at
217 now, so
217. So we're not even back to where we were at on the staffing levels. Again, more efficiency. Some of that's technology, some of that's just, I think, experience that we protected the team as well throughout COVID. So, but I still think that we're continuing to try to get to that 240 based on the amount of space that we have and the number of events that we see still the demand on. We'd like to get to that 240. That would really allow us to take everything that really comes through, not necessarily every single event, but everything that makes sense from an event side.
And is that really on the service side?
Yeah,
You're
a lot of
looking
that
for-
is on the part-time. Where we struggle at, and I'll get into that slide a little bit later, is mostly the daytime weekdays right now, just because of the high student population. So servicing a large breakfast or lunch during the weekday is a challenge right now still. And so we're looking for more and trying to kind of figure out how we can incentivize that population that might be looking for a second job that works an evening or a weekend. So.
Madam Chair, if I may
Mhm.
ask a clarifying question. Cody, thank you. I'm looking at the previous two slides you had each event that had above $100,000 in revenue bolded.
Correct.
If you were to estimate, or you might know this number, what is the ratio of events that exceed $100,000 local versus conventions that we bring in from out of town?
It's a good question. It would be a giant estimate on my part, but I've
Yeah,
done
just
this long
shoot
enough
from
that
the
I
hip.
think it would probably be 60% on the local event side and 40% on the convention side.
And I did the math as you went through, and that's what I ended at. So 60% of the events that
Locally,
exceed $100,000 are local events.
correct. Yep. It's finding that right mix. I think we could pick up more conventions that would hit that amount. It's the hotel component that we've talked about. That's a
Bottom-
challenge.
Is
from
that the
side.
bottleneck?
Yes, absolutely.
So following on to that, then I just did revenue to events ratio for 2022, revenue per event from this slide. Being strategic and turning away business, do you see that? What do you think is going to happen in 2023? The revenues per
The
event.
revenues are going to continue to be increased per event. Again, we've been more strategic even than we were before. I think, again, as we got into gross profit margin conversations, or the first thing we did is protect the staff. So we raised staffing wages up. So we're seeing that gross profit margin pinch down a little bit, but the number of events that we're taking, I anticipate we'll continue to see that per revenue or per event revenue continue to increase significantly.
We've been taking price increases on key elements, particularly on the food and beverage side.
We tend to stagger those with room rate increases in food and beverage and AV, so our clients don't feel that every single year that they're getting another increase. So we try to go with increase to the room rate, and maybe some AV, and then maybe food and beverage. Service charges in the industry continue to be the one thing that we're paying very close attention to. When I started here, we were at 18%, and we've gone to 20. We're now at 22. The industry that I just surveyed from the regional group that I'm part of, a lot of those venues are at 24 and 25% service charges right
So
now.
below. Well, the strategy seems to work because the average revenue per event was 20K in 2021, and it's about 35K in 2022.
Correct.
Okay.
So again,
Thank you for
strategy is working, but with that comes the other component, which is the economic impact, the number of heads and beds and all of that, which is, again, while the hotels are at the occupancy rates that they're at, I don't think that's a challenge because they're getting those people staying in the hotels. But as that number starts to drop down, it's going to be a decision as we work with the sales team on how do we forecast that 2 to 4 or 5 years out for conventions.
Makes sense. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, some operational updates. We've hired a new operations manager, Alan Cushing. Alan came to us from Portland. He ran the Mount Hood Kiwanis camp there, a very high impact individual. I think he's made an impact already on the team in the short time that he's been here. Super excited about his experience, but also just his leadership style to the team very much fits the culture that we've created here at Boise Center. So we're super excited about him. We've hired 2 new event managers, actually, Lauren Hamilton, and then we've replaced since this last meeting, as well with Katie McLean, who is coming to us as another event manager, and Marissa has gone to Top Golf. So we've had a lot of turnover in the event manager area. Top Golf took 2 of them, and we continue to train and staff up in that area as well. From the AV side, it was another record year in 2022 from revenue. We broke $1 million. That's something that I'm very, very proud of on this team. I remember when I started here, we had Chris Morrison, who's up there on the screen. His photo was our one-man show on an AV team, and we've turned that into a department at 1 million in revenue. And that's over a short, about 5 or 6 years that we've built that department up into that. So I'm super proud of that. As I spoke about Chris Morrison, he is actually retiring in Q1 of 2023. So we have a retirement party planned for Chris in March. We've hired a new AV manager at the beginning of the year, so the two of them can kind of work alongside each other for about 90 days to 100 days. Daniel Morgos comes in from a different background, a little bit more on the manufacturing side and how the equipment works, but he is quick to learn on the live event side. And so far, I'm noticing that our clients are being taken care of at the same level. Our guest satisfaction surveys are being maintained, and the quality of AV that we're providing is being maintained as well. On the IT side, this is Tony Colangelo's department. We've had Wi-Fi array upgrades throughout the entire facility, which is going to now support Wi-Fi 6, which is a new technology that's coming on phones and being expected by end users. Phone upgrade we did internally here, and that's allowing for some more opportunity for people that may work on a remote day or something like that. They're going to answer their phone and they're on the road, our sales team in particular. Before, there was a bit of a challenge between calling out and making it look like they were calling from their business phone versus giving out their personal cell phone information. So this allows more of a conducive hybrid work environment on their phone upgrade. Multi-factor authentication is what MFA stands for. And for those that haven't experienced this in any other venues, it can be a pinch point for end users. It is allowing us, it's part of our requirement for our insurance. In order to get cybersecurity insurance and protected there, they require this piece here. It's basically the same thing that if you're used to signing into a bank account, that they require a text message or a second form of authentication to get into systems. So we've initiated that onto any of our high security systems that carry data or information that we want to protect here at Boise Center.
And I know I just went through this. I know Tony, Ed helped me. I was having some issues with logging in, and I did the MFA. I would request that the rest of the board do that as well, just so that we can protect the system. So if you would mind connecting with the rest of the
Just
board.
reach out to us.
Perfect. And get that instituted, because we don't want to be you don't want to be the weak link in the chain that takes down the entire system. So.
I'm gonna get an email from Pat asking for gift cards, double check it.
Exactly.
Fiber connectivity to all rooms in Boise Center. What that allows us to do is now we can support up to 1 gig speeds in all rooms, and that's hardwire. So that's a little different than the wireless, but that allows us to do big, large gaming conventions, things that require those hard lines to do a large amount of broadband spread out quickly.
And I'm sure you charge accordingly.
Sorry, what's that?
You charge accordingly?
Yes, we do. We're still cheaper than most of our counterparts in the Northwest, but we're continuing to increase that. The local events, and that's part of the pricing structure, as we continue to see increases on that. The local events just don't have the same level of appetite for increases. In the national market we're very affordable. So we're kind of trying to balance that right now and continue to. It was interesting as I got to travel with the sales team this last year and getting to know that the $38 a gallon of coffee, which always sounded absurd to me, is the sales point. And I know looking at some of the clients' meetings, it's impactful.
90, 95.
That and then our closeness to the airport were the two things that really drove it home. Facilities updates, we are planning for Boise Center East carpet and paint in December. That is something that we do about every 7 years throughout the space, as through that many people coming through our building, about 160 some thousand people come through each year. We noticed that the paint, carpet, things like that. So if you're walking through East, you'll actually see something which a facility person knows is tenting happening with the carpet squares, where you'll start seeing those seams between the carpet squares. You're starting to see them either squished together and you're seeing a little tenting, or just fringing happening between those. So again, we've had better luck with the type of manufactured carpet we have on the east or on the west building than we did on the east. Again, these are part of that public procurement process that you go through looking for the best carpet possible. But we've identified that we think we have a better product on this side. So as we go forward, we're looking into that manufacturer. It should give us a little longer use out of that paint and carpet. But this is part of our strategy too, is to replace, keep the spaces fresh. A lot of our events are local repeats. So having them here 7 or 8 years in a row with the same colors and same carpet, it's kind of a nice chance for them to get a refresh every so often as well. Wall coverings over there is something that we think is holding on pretty well. That's also on the 7-year plan, but we're going to extend that for a few more years because they're holding real good. Grove Plaza, we executed a new contract with the city of Boise. Basically, there's 2 components that changed. On that was no more visitor center as of December 1st, as the CVB has taken on that component. And updates to the fountain maintenance, snow removal terms were in there as well. We identified it quite a long time ago that we aren't the best at managing fountains because we just have one. The city has many, so they have resources and abilities far beyond what we can do. So we just said, hey, is that a piece that you guys would like to take on? And they agreed. So we adjusted some of the contract rates and the amounts to back off of that. So, and then snow removal as well. We protected Boise Center and in particular the Grove Plaza, to allow the Boise Center to make some discretionary decisions on snow removal. So that way, if we've got a guest in-house or clients in-house that we want to make sure it's taken care of, we still can and pass that cost on to the city. So didn't completely take that out of our hands. So we want to make sure we're strategic in that. Food and beverage updates, continues to increase food and beverage service sizes, as we talked about just this upcoming about 2 weeks on the 11th. We had an all hands on deck calendar hold for everybody. The food and beverage team came to me and said, go ahead and release it. We're feeling really good about that evening. And that is something I know our team is excited about. As much as I don't mind working all the events and being here, it is something that it gives us a chance to do what we do full time for our jobs rather than to try to kind of go back into it. It is part of our culture, and you'll see it as you attend events here. A lot of our management team still works large events, and that's going to continue. It just isn't going to be required as much as it was prior to make sure the staffing levels are protected. Fiscal year 2022 was also a record revenue year for food and beverage. They broke over $5 million in revenue of a total of about almost 9 million. We had a new donated liquor policy created that allows for nonprofits to bring in donated liquor and have them auctioned off. So the state worked with us on a new policy there. Excited about that because that was something that we were hearing from nonprofits, is it would be an opportunity for them to generate more funds from auctions. Culinary, this is one I'm super proud of, so it's in bold there, is our 5 years of no infractions from the health department. Again, we would invite anybody, and on our busiest day, to come walk through our kitchens. Our commercial kitchens are the cleanest of any commercial kitchen, I believe, in the industry, but let alone in probably the United States. There's probably a few out there that can compete with us, but it is something that I'm proud of when I see our team every single shift, at the end of the shift, cleaning that kitchen. It always looks like it's kind of coming back to brand new for the next event that's coming in. It's something we're very proud of. We've continued to manage volatile food costs in 2022 extremely well. I think the chef did a great job of kind of eyeing different proteins and opportunities when turkeys weren't available and going to chicken on some of the events. And again, we managed that as best as we could with all the challenges in food costs and availability. The new dish well is something I can speak to personally, is something that was installed in Boise Center West Dish Room. As we've had all hands on deck, I know me and Pat were back there, and the old dish well was only about so deep. It would only hold a few different plates. So you're back there trying to soak and clean off plates. The new one is much deeper. It allows for you to soak those plates, spray them off. You don't get as much contact with the food waste. It allows us to capture more food waste rather than it going into our drains. So again, very proud of the dish well. I know that's kind of probably TMI for everybody, but we're proud of the equipment that we get with our team. We appreciate the board support, because those are capital projects you guys all support.
We stay much drier.
Yes, we don't come out soaked or covered in. And so does the dishwashers, and they appreciate it. Walk-in cooler number 4, as we're coming up on a 30-year-old building, things like that are needing replaced. So that's our main walk-in cooler that services most of the events off of our back service hall. And we're going to get a full renovation on that, little higher ceilings to allow for some higher storage and more additional storage. On the staffing levels, we continue to evaluate the number of staff that we've got, and that means the number of layers within that staff. We've created a new assistant food and beverage manager position in 2022, and we've promoted internally our food and beverage captain, Emma Phobes, to that position. Very proud of that. As I spoke to, we've raised our base rate and pay. The city's, I believe, at like 16, 18 for the city of Boise's minimum wage. We're at $16 an hour, so we stayed competitive with that. And again, as I spoke to, all hands on events are becoming less frequent as staffing levels continue to rise. And we continue to evaluate our org chart as staffing levels increase. With that, I'll just kind of finish it off on a culture and staff updates. We're very, very proud of this one, and this is one that I've spoke to the board about before, but just I want for TM's benefit here. Back last spring, we did a survey. It was in the middle of May, or early May actually, for Idaho top workplaces, and it was at a time where back in COVID, we had said, hey, we think we're going to be fully staffed. Let's go ahead and get the spring of 2022 booked up as much as we can. I was at a conference at IAVM with Pat, and I was starting to get text messages from the team that were just like, hey, we're feeling overwhelmed. This is what's going on. We've had call-ins. We still had some sickness going on, but the team was feeling it. And it was at the same time that we surveyed them on how this is a place to work. And I thought, wow, what a terrible time to survey them on how good this is to work here. We won the award. So again, it's probably our low point of the barometer mark of where we could have surveyed the staff, but that still came out in glowing reviews from our staff to win the Idaho top workplaces in 2022. We're going to participate in 2023, so we're in the process of that actually right now. And then we held an October 31st, which was a lot of fun. It was actually during Halloween, one of the dates that just happened to be dark, one of the only days in October. So we took advantage, had an all staff meeting, had a kind of allowed people to get in costume, had a lot of fun with it, did some staff and team building and some educational stuff for the team. So a lot of fun there. Logistics Committee, for those that don't know what it is, it's basically a culture program. Logistics is a culture program that we've invested into, support, and make sure that the team has buy-in through a logistics committee, which they're nominated to be on the committee, employees are from their peers. And we take different people from all different departments and make sure that they kind of help plan out our all staff meetings, any of our trainings, our philanthropy for the year. They get involved at a very intricate level on what we want to do to make this a great place to work. So we have a new logistics committee that has taken over for 2023 and excited to work with them on how the culture continues to evolve. Like we always say, it's not a thing that it's a, here's what our culture looks like. It's an ever evolving culture and we continue to build on it. And the staff have that input and say in how that looks going forward.
Stephanie was actually part of that.
Yeah, Stephanie was actually part of that this last year. So again, current staffing levels as of 2/17/23 was at 217, which is ironic on 2/17. But the goal is 240, as I spoke to before, and we continue to do everything we can to incentivize that. Really now it's strategic in those additional 33 or 23 employees really is trying to go, what can we get for daytime availability, week time availability from some of our service staff. Organizational updates, executive leadership, as you guys have heard, continue to revenue manage our space with a mix of local and convention demand. Boise Center East refresh, as I highlighted, and just a couple conferences. The IAVM Region 4 conference will be held in Portland, Oregon from April 10th through the 12th. That's something that I help plan right now as the Assistant Director of Region 4. And then IAVM Venue Connect will be held in Pittsburgh. It's something that I would highly encourage board members, if you haven't attended it, it's a really good chance. I know Jody, you've challenged us before, whether or not we're selling the good news or whether we're selling that. I can tell you, when you go to these conventions and you see the way Boise Center is doing things, I like to think we truly are a beacon of success in the industry right now. And I think our counterparts look to us in that way. While we are the small, little tiny guy, a lot of people, even including the big convention centers, kind of come to us from a culture standpoint. How are you guys doing what you're doing? Revenue managing the space is another one that we spoke at IAVM regional events and talked to other convention centers about what we're doing. And I know it was last spring that I actually presented at IAVM at the regional conference and talking about the revenue managing our space and being more strategic. And it was kind of an eye opener for some of the venues that have never approached it that way. So something I'm very proud of, and I appreciate your guys' continued support and that association, because I think it pays dividends on the strategic side and also allows us to really kind of see what we do well and where we can get better. So with that, I thank you guys for your continued support. I'll take questions.
Any questions?
What is it, Madam Chair? I'm sure you know, what is IAVM?
It is International Association of Venue Managers. So it's an association of convention centers, stadiums, arenas, performing arts venues. There's a few smaller event venues that belong to it, but for the most part, it's anything of substantial, it does events of substantial size. There's some fairgrounds included.
So one of these is a regional meeting, the other is a national meeting?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
And you, sorry, go ahead.
So how many venues would you say are?
Venues, that's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head that one. The attendees is normally pre-COVID about 1,800. They've been building back up to that number from the international side. The regional side's about 125. We actually had the record in Boise when we held it. And then COVID was in 2019. COVID was right after. It's been building up and I'm anticipating Portland this year will probably hit that number or higher.
Oh, and you noted your role for the regional,
I'm the assistant director. So what that is it's a 6-year commitment. It's actually a 7 with COVID in there because we kind of had a carryover. And you start out as secretary treasurer of the association kind of in the region. And then you move 2 years from that into the assistant director role. Currently, I'm kind of the director because my director is on leave for maternity leave. And then I take 2 years. So I'm finishing up 1 more year as the assistant director. And then I'll move on to the director of the region for 2 additional years. And that's leading the conferences, managing basically any of the content, scholarships, selling sponsorships, things like that for the association.
nice.
Allie Raporti, who's on maternity right now, she also is on the sales consortium for IAVM. And in fact, she's the director of the consortium this year. So she'll be presenting it in Pittsburgh as well. I'm proud of these guys because, Anne Marie's taken on a role with the state, GOA, right?
The National Government Finance Officers Association.
So I'm really excited about the fact that here we have one of the smallest facilities, when you in the convention center world, And yet we've got great representation from a small independent that potentially and hopefully will lead to positions at the national level.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Cody.
Nice meeting.
I guess you're Ryan today.
I'm gonna be Ryan. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures like Ryan does. Madam Chair, board members, thanks for having us again. Just a couple updates here as we move closer to opening the facility. Timeline wise, we are still on schedule for a late April, early May opening of the facility. As Anne Marie said, both HVAC units are on site. Anybody who is a facilities person and would like to see it, they're massive. There's a 48-foot concrete slab in the back of the building where these things sit. They're really impressive.
And to note there, they were 2 to 3 weeks early.
They were supposed to be here March 7th, so they got here last week. One has been installed, one is being installed this week. Crane to put the second one in. So concrete suppliers have started pouring the pool deck. Will continue pouring every day. We expect it to be fully poured by Wednesday morning of this week. So the entire pool deck will be poured by Wednesday. Locker room and support areas are ahead of schedule. Lockers are in, showers are installed. Toilets are going in, sinks will go in later this week. The deck drain has been installed around the entire pool deck, as well as all of the equipment needed to run a swim meet, the stanchions for all the backstroke flags, the ADA lifts, the bulkhead track, which moves the movable wall, has been installed, and it's just waiting for them to put the movable wall in. That is on site right now. Since our last meeting, Ryan and I have placed 2 more bids on swim meets. 2024 August, the zone meet similar to the meet we will host this year in August. And then 2025, we will hopefully hear today after this meeting, I'll hop on a call in a March 2025 senior meet, which is again 500 to 600 people coming into Boise in March. This year it is up in Seattle, and I'll head up there with a couple kids in 10 days to King County Aquatic Center in Seattle. So we'll hopefully bring that here. The water polo community here, which is not huge, but is strong, is working on details to solidify a date to host a showcase event with Tony Azevedo, who is a 5-time Olympian and arguably the greatest water polo player in American history. So he is from Southern California and excited to get up to Boise. He has never been here, so he wants to show up. He does these events where he invites 200 and 300 kids from around the country. Put on sort of a, sports fans, an NFL combine-like weekend where they do a bunch of drills and get graded and get split up into teams. And he usually brings 7 to 8 Olympians with him and they coach the kids. So he's excited to come up this way, and we're excited to have him. Swim lesson programming and signups will be launching late March, early April with a start date of June 5th. We want to give ourselves a couple weeks there to sort of get our feet wet and make sure everything is running, and then train staff and all those other things. So those things will be launching soon. Other programming is already starting to fill up pool space. Obviously, competitive swim teams are excited about getting in there and being in the facility. The water polo group is excited. We're still in negotiations with one local school district for daytime swim lessons for their school kids, and then high school events, swim meets, district meets, stuff like that. We will be hosting a group this summer just for kids, which is a Boise School District group. So they'll come to the pool 3 days a week throughout the summer for sort of splash time and free swim time. We've talked about trying to get their kids some swim lessons, and we'll see how we sort of work that out. Funding updates. We are still out pounding the pavement, trying to find additional community interest and investment in the project. We're meeting with Regents, Blue Cross, Simplot, and others. Ryan and I are still optimistic that someone is going to jump in and bite and throw some money at this project, which is a great community investment, and we'll help, plenty of people in the community. We are willing to meet and take introductions with anyone and all, and any parties interested in helping us out or meeting with us and talking about it. You know, I know he had spoken with Emery about what cash we have on hand and what to expect here in the next couple of months as the bills start coming back in here. To make sure that we are set for a late April, early May opening. As always, we would like to invite anybody in the room, anybody who wants to come out to the facility, come on out. Get you in there anytime you want to. Just let us know and love to get you guys out there. Now that the pool deck is poured, it's a little bit easier on the shoes. You can wear your work shoes out there and it's not so crazy. Any questions from you guys?
So I'm assuming you're still gonna continue to look for funding even after you open?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I would assume that that might actually help because then people can see the programming in place and see the impact that you're making.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's gonna take, you know, one person, one parent who's on one of these boards or involved in one of these companies, they have their kid come into swim lessons and enjoy it, and all of a sudden say, why aren't we involved in this? And it, you know, it's typically how we see it happen. It's a parent who is influential in these things, has a child who comes and uses the facility, and all of a sudden it steamrolls from there.
And then as far as the construction costs, I know there's been some fluctuation, like the concrete was a little cheaper, you know, how's that kind of shaking out as you're moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the concrete was a little bit cheaper, and then there was a couple of things. The bleachers are on site now, so we had to pay that out a little bit early. There were some alterations to the bleachers due to city permitting. We had to have extra ADA spots put in, so we had to move some of that around, and that cost a little bit more. But overall, we're still sitting at, you know, 250,000 in contingency that we haven't touched. We don't plan on touching because everything is here right now.
And it's all kind of evening out.
It is evening out, yeah. We thought we would save a little bit more because the concrete was a little bit cheaper, and then some other stuff just sort of popped up that we just didn't see. I would assume people who are familiar with construction and projects see that happen all the time.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I think the naming rights actually maybe gave it the day after our last
Oh,
meeting.
okay, so the last meeting.
They
so
said we had a meeting.
We are doing it is now the Idaho Central Aquatic Center. ICCU has agreed to the naming rights there as part of a funding partnership. So we are excited to have the Idaho Central Aquatic Center and the ICC logo on the building, on the east facade and on the south end, which is exciting. That stuff will all start going up next week as well.
So as you continue to fundraise, are there more naming rights opportunities, or what are the benefits?
There are naming rights opportunities for the competition pool, for the therapy pool. The scoreboard in the locker rooms and the bleachers have been named already, been purchased, but there is programming naming rights. More than happy to forward that on to anybody who is interested or who might know somebody who is interested. We're more than eager to get those things out.
I'd like to see that. I think Pat and I are gonna come. He's gonna help me schedule a little on-site visit.
Absolutely. Anytime anybody wants to be out there, just let us know, contact Ryan or myself, and we'll get it scheduled and get you guys out there for sure. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
All right. How's things going, Pat?
Madam Chair. Nothing better than a Monday morning meeting being the last on the agenda. I'm going to be very brief today because it is getting late, and I'll offer up questions after my presentation. So we're heading into March. There's about, according to the speaker who says he wants to be out on the 24th of March, we got about four more weeks of the session left. Now, whether we get out on the 24th left is going to be left to be seen. I think John and Kylie and we agreed that it may go a little bit longer. Last year, there were 368 bills introduced at this point in time. This year, there's 337 bills. So it's relatively the same. The difference this year, and it seems slow, I mean, for us, it seems to be really slow, kind of lethargic. There's only one new chairman in the Senate that is a chairman of the subject matter. In other words, you have 9 new chairmen of the Senate of 10 committees. In the House, you have 14 committees and you have 10 new chairmen. So all these new chairmen have never done this before. You have 31 members in the House, you got a whole bunch of new members in the Senate. And people are just trying to figure out, I mean, literally, how structurally they can operate the committees. And they're reluctant. Some of these folks have never done it before. They come from rural areas. They just don't want to get out there and make a mistake. So we've got a backlog of bills. It'll start pouring out. You're seeing it today. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff going on up there as we speak. But the transmittal date's the 2nd of March. In other words, traditionally, by the 2nd of March, you have to have your bill has to clear one side of the Senate, either the Senate or the House. Well, now the transmittal date, I mean, I think they're going to throw that out the window this year because everything is so backed up. That's kind of structurally what's going on. There's that kind of push and pull from the Senate side. People are saying we need to get bills. Chairmen are trying to figure out how to get the bills put on the calendar and get them moving. But finally, you're starting to see the kind of the wheels get on the track, starting to move. And they're getting coaxed by both House and Senate leadership. The big pieces of legislation that are going on up there right now, the governor's launch bill, what's that, $8,500 per student that goes towards career technical training. Passed the House 36-34, is sitting in the Senate right now. I won't say languishing, but it's not moving forward. The Senate has some problems with that bill. They want to amend it. The governor doesn't want to amend it. So there's that going on. The House wants to get it back because the Speaker wants to kill it. He was against it the first time. So there's a real big give and take going on between House and Senate on leadership on that bill and with the governor. Education savings accounts, the other big issue. There's going to be a vote on that today up in the House Ed Committee. Medicaid reform. Chairman of the committee, John Vanderwater, put together a bill out that said our Medicaid costs are exorbitant. We've got to find a way to capture that. So he put together a Medicaid reform bill that basically just sets forth a format in next year when we come back. How do you structure this? How would we go about any sort of Medicaid reform? Then, of course, last but not least is always, you've got to have a Mobile property tax bill, or, the Senate or the legislature isn't, working properly. And that tax bill is being run by Chairman of the Revenue Tax Committee, Jason Monks. But it's a Moyle bill. It looked like it was going to move forward here through the House and Senate until he opposed the governor on the launch bill. And now the governor mysteriously has problems with that property tax bill. So that will go to the end of the session. We'll have these things all stirring around. We're getting ready for the big House Senate governor fight here in the next couple of weeks where everybody's going to raise cane, fight over their agendas. Then they'll meet back and figure out how to move forward to get the heck out of here. I know a bill that the director brought to our attention, House Bill 70, where the state can't spend funds to promote. That bill passed the House 54-14. I think it's going to go, I don't see it stopping in the Senate, but the Senate doesn't want to amend it. So we'll see some amendments to it. That's something we'll discuss and see if there's any. I think they're going to try to pull the teeth out of what the House did, frankly.
So for the members, initially that bill or some version of it would have prohibited local government entities as well from providing support to any private nonprofit, et cetera, which, for example, would have meant that the auditorium district could not provide money to support the Big Sky basketball tournament. But it is reworked now to
Only state agencies.
only state agencies, so the 19 or 20 state departments. So
Madam Chair, what about the Department of Commerce?
It would take into consideration.
They'll be out of business?
no, they can do it with the governor's.
Yeah, they can get the governor's approval to do it. They can move forward with it.
But there's a lot of events. I reached out to our team and to the CBB and Carrie provided, well, they all provided me with lists of state agencies that do business with us. And I forwarded that on to John. So not sure where that's gonna go actually.
And what is considered sponsorship?
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
What is considered sponsorship in the bill? What do they consider sponsorship as?
It's,
Did they not
It's-
define that?
I think it's effectively anything but paying for services, more or less.
yeah,
once you get
it's,
there.
if you're paying money out to an entity, that would be considered, I think. So
Broad.
it's pretty broad.
So again, they can, they can certainly pay, us money directly to use our space, but but all the other ancillary stuff, I mean, Pat, whoever, the two Pats, whoever made the point about, I hadn't even thought about the fact that, yeah, their grant to, the CVB would be, they would be, Department of Commerce wouldn't be able to do that without the government. So all those things.
So I think, what I'm hearing, gathering is I think the Senate is beginning it, this is finally starting to get into the public domain, if you will. A lot goes on up there that people really like, what is going, but this finally, everyone's starting to read it going, what the heck are these doing? And I think you're starting to see, a little bit of energy around this bill to kind of maybe go make it reasonable. So people can come and do operations here without, and I'm not sure I knew what Jason Monk was getting at with this bill, other than he was frustrated, right, with, these entities spending money to promote, and I think he just wanted to make a statement. But anyway, that's something we're gonna watch closely. The funding formula, there's a bill out there that Chairman Horman's doing on education. It's gonna rework the funding formula for education. That hasn't even been dropped yet. That's gonna be a big piece of business. That's something that's gonna involve certainly the House, Senate, and the governor's cooperation to get it done. The ESG hearings, they're going on right now as we speak in the House committee. And then the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee started voting on last Wednesday, which was,
The ESC legislation, we chatted a little earlier, there's 3 different bills. I'm not sure what's in
Right.
them all, but how will it affect our investments or more importantly, Percy or the endowment fund?
well, it's my take that they've gone in there and cleared all that. I think they've tried to gauge all that as they've moved through the CSG, so they're not affecting some of those state agencies. That's my understanding. And there's a number, but there's 2 or 3 of those bills.
Three
out there.
bills.
There's 3 bills out there.
Yeah, Manager, I think that's it's a good point. Jody, it's unclear exactly how it's gonna shake out in terms of, actual investments and what kind of reps and warranties you need. And the other unintended consequence here is that I think the board may know, we have to include in our larger contracts, we have to get representation from folks that they don't engage in anti-Israel boycotts. And we also have to do due diligence to make certain people we are contracting with don't support abortions. And the one ESG, one of the versions of the ESG bills may end up with the same, again, sort of unintended consequence where we may need to get reps from people just that we're normally contracting with that about some of the ESG stuff. But so in addition to the more logical thing, which I think Jody pointed out that, our investments and whatnot, there may be these other unintended consequences that we have to deal with. But hopefully maybe the bills will, get cleaned up and more logical.
Yeah, they're in the House committee right now, is where they're starting. They'll go to the Senate. Usually by the time they get to the Senate, you're getting enough pushback on them that they'll start amending those. These bills are all gonna be worked and reworked, I think, before we get to the end of the line. John, I want you to comment on the procurement bill that on ESG.
Yeah, House Bill 191 is an ESG bill that prohibits public entities from using ESG as a qualification and a qualification-based selection. For instance, you couldn't put ESG activity as a reason to select somebody for a construction management contract or a design contract. it couldn't be used as a metric. That's 191.
You can't use, excuse me, corporate governance, for example. So you got a board that's dysfunctional and the
Right.
raiders are taking over. You can't consider that.
Technically not, the language in fact says. Well, you, something,
Yeah,
actually, it wasn't one of the clients pointed this out to me. One of the words is, well, depending on how you define E, but one of the bills talks about you can't make it on the basis of any ethical concerns, which would sort of go to, is your board functional or dysfunctional? Or so there are, yeah, all. As Pat points out, hopefully we will be able
yeah,
to
I mean, these
get some of this cleared up.
ESG bills are rolled out. Again, you know, these are, the social warriors are up there working really hard this year. And you're seeing it from militia bills to abortion bills to ESG. But I think what we're beginning to see is as that gets out into the public domain, they're starting to hear the outcry from their constituents and from business community, the legal community going, you've got a huge problem with this bill. And so I think what I see, the House, which they always do, they'll pass a bill and throw it over the Senate. Then they'll all run over the Senate and say, you got to amend this bill because it has problems. So I do see all this stuff getting amended. The Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry have been right on top of this very closely to make sure that it has a balance to it. And they're working on that. So.
For instance, House Bill 191, the procurement ESG bill has 31 co-sponsors.
Yeah, that's gonna come out of the House. They only need 36 votes to get it out. They'll get that out of the
How do
House.
these people make their living? I mean, if you're in business, you've got to consider everything about the people you're doing business with.
Director, have you seen the legislature?
Sorry, Madam Chair.
We're not. I mean, there's probably 15 legislators, 20 of them, that don't have jobs other than being legislators. And conceptually, to them, that's irrelevant.
The other difficulty with all these bills is that there is no definition of ESG at either at the federal level, well, much less in Idaho, but and the SEC and the MSRB have tried to promulgate a few guidelines and have engaged in a few things, but right now there are effectively a couple of bizarrely sort of private companies that will come out and rate your project or your financing, wherever it is, based on some set of criteria, which is not regulated by anybody. And so one of the problems with the bills are that there's no, you don't really know what the playing field is that we're playing on in the first place. So
We sat through a hearing this morning. I mean, just as an example, Representative Foreman from up north brought a bill down that said, if you're in a parade, you can carry a gun. I mean, now the military can authorize to do it, but a militia can now, load up, strap on their ARs and march down the street in a parade. That passed the Senate this morning, passed the Senate committee 7-2. I mean, those are the issues we're seeing this year. It's very social related budgets. I mean, the budget stuff, which is important, that's just rolling through. I mean, no one's even paying attention to it. So I think the governor's going to get his budget because no one's paid attention to it. Very interesting year, very, very interesting. All my years of doing this, I've never seen anything so discombobulated as this year.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
what about the universities? Are they being, portions of their budgets being?
They're looking at scrutinizing, yeah, when they come up, I think you're gonna see, the chairman of the House Committee, Wendy Foreman, go after Boise State. And I don't know what will happen. I think Idaho and ISU may be okay, from what I'm hearing. But, they appointed a vice president for diversity over there and just threw that place into tizzy. So they're very frustrated over that. And so they go to the budget and they'll try to, reprimand Boise State through the budget. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's what they're doing.
Thank you.
Madam
Any
Chair, if I may.
questions?
Mhm.
The bill regarding the sponsorship by state entities, is that Bill 170?
Yes,
What do you see the likelihood of that being amended, changed?
I think it's gonna get amended. I think the Senate was gonna amend that bill when it gets over, yeah, I think so.
And how did it pass the House again? One more time, what were the numbers?
54, I think it was 54-14.
Pretty substantial.
Yeah, it passed by a huge margin. I was surprised by that vote, frankly. I thought it'd be a little bit less, but again, sometimes the House, it passed early. And I think, again, those are the types of bills that when they get out in the public, people start reading those, say, wait a minute, what's this mean? They start asking questions and then, all the downside of the issue starts rolling out. By the time it gets to the Senate, then the Senate's like, well, there's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem. So I submit this will go to the amending order. And in the Senate, in other words, it'll go up for amendment, there'll be a bunch of amendments put on it. Probably tried to tear the teeth out of most of it, frankly. And I'm not sure the governor, I don't know what the governor's at on, he may veto it. He is threatening a lot of vetoes this year, by the way. He's advised many legislators, if there's a question on their bill, when they come down to talk to him about it, not to sit too close to his desk because the red may splatter on, the red of the veto stamp may splatter on their seats.
Any other
Any
questions?
questions?
Yeah,
Madam Chair,
nope, just keep us up to date on
we are,
that and let us know if you need any additional information from our side.
thank you.
All right, seeing no other business before the board. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.